Magnus Carlsen's fast pawn traps Hikaru's king in this match, and Hikaru resigns because the game is will not be possible without sacrificing his queen for just a pawn. So that's the game here. So Hikaru is playing with the black pieces, and Magnus is playing with the white pieces on the here. It's a Sicilian on the board here. So after the pawn is captured, knight captures back here, and pawn push to e5 makes this the Levantal variation of the Sicilian defense. So knight now jumps to b5 here, and pawn push to d6 here, creating this pawn formation for Sicilian here, and this backward pawn here is a weakness which could be attacked as usual in Sicilian. So g3 is played, allowing you to de-ancient this bishop and castle on the king side, and h5 is played in response by Hikaru. So basically, this pawn could storm in once you castle, causing problems for Magnus. So knight jumps to c3 here, and pawn push hits this knight, and the knight retrieves here to a3, and pawn push to b5 is played here with the intent of pushing in b6 and capturing one of these knights. So knight now goes to the d5 here onto this nice little outpost, placing knight into the black camp. So knight to e7 is played, and bishop now comes to g2, fianchetting this bishop, and bishop to g4 is played, using this pawn here as an outpost, attacking the queen by Hikaru. So pawn push counterattacks the bishop, and the bishop retrieves to e6 here, and pawn push to c3 here gives this nice little square for the knight to jump in case of a pawn march here. It also allows you to develop the queen onto the queen side if required. So pawn push to h4, and knight now jumps to c2, and after this knight is captured by the bishop, pawn captures back as you cannot capture with the queen here. So with the knight attack, knight jumps here to a5 here, looking to occupy this outpost over here, and pawn push to f4 by Magnus here. So instead of going for the capture, knight jumps to f5 here, and Magnus pushes his next pawn to g4, attacking the knight, and instead of moving the knight, Hikaru counterattacks by pushing h3 here. So bishop now goes to e4, attacking the knight, and knight jumps to h4 here, which Hikaru could have just bought his queen here with a check, and the king will be forced to move here to f1 here. It's the first move. After that, you could move your knight as well. So but this allows Magnus to go for the castling on the king side here, and pawn is pushed to g6 now. King moves away to h1 here. Magnus could also play the queen to e2 move here, but he felt it's better to bring the king into the safety because of the pawn push here, keeping the king safe. Bishop to g7 by Hikaru, but the best move was to push this pawn and attack this pawn structure of Magnus here. This allowed Magnus to push for f5 because f5 was not played by Hikaru. So after the pawn captures back, and knight now jumps to g2 here. The best move was to bring the bishop here, block this advance of the pawn here, because after that Magnus just does that. He just pushes the pawn here and attacks the bishop here. So bishop drop back to f8 here, but the best move was to capture this pawn here. If you capture the pawn like this, the queen will come in and attack this particular bishop, and your bishop will be defenseless. And if you move the bishop, basically you will be checkmated as well. So that might be the reason. But this rook can come in like this. So if you capture this bishop, you can capture back here, or you can probably exchange of the queens and get the king to safety here, and after that you can just recapture this lost bishop here. So the game will continue like this in this particular line, but that was not played here. Bishop retrieved here to f8. So queen now comes to f3 regardless, and queen to c7 by Hikaru, and knight jumps to b4 here, looking to occupy this nice little c6 outpost, which is a very good square for the knight to be in. This square and this square and this square is a good outpost for the knights to be in the pawn outpost. So knight to b7 is played here because the knights on the rims are dim, because but this knight is a good knight here. It was protecting this knight from coming in over here. But after this move, it allowed Magnus to bring his knight here and start an attack on the Hikaru's camp here. So the knight goes to c6, attacking the bishop, and bishop goes to f5 here. And after knight to d7 move, attacking this pawn, the bishop goes to g5, protecting the pawn. So rook comes in here to g8, attacking the bishop here, and the best move was to bring the queen over here, but basically the queen goes in and support the bishop. And after the knight move to b6, bishop to e6 move is played here, because this move is possible because this pawn here is pinned. You cannot capture uh, with your pawn here, and that move makes it possible that. So basically, this allows this rook to capture this particular bishop here, and once queen capture back, you can capture this bishop. But this capture is a bishop, because once this pawn capture back, you're threatening to push this pawn, and basically there won't be any space for this king to go in here. So because of that, uh, Hikaru chose to resign this game as of this position, because after this knight move, let's say you play this knight move, this pawn is pushed here because there is nothing else you can do to prevent this. You cannot bring your queen here because your queen will be gone. So once this pawn is pushed here, it's a check because of the bishop here. There is nowhere else for the king to go in here because the squares are covered by the queen and the knight and the pawn. So the only possible move is the queen to capture this pawn here, and after this pawn is captured back, king will have to go in here, because if we go in here, this knight here will be pinned here, and it was best to attack this knight here. So this rook can capture this knight, and once in exchange this particular knight will be captured, and rook comes here to f3 here, and this pawn could be queened, and you could lose one, black could lose one more piece. So that's why Hikaru chose to resign as of this position and kind of so thanks for watching. We'll be back with more sessions.